On a cool autumn evening, the kind where the air feels crisp and refreshing, Marcus Johnson found himself sitting at an outdoor cafe in his hometown. It was one of those rare moments when he could finally relax after months of being deployed, overseas as a Navy SEAL. He had earned this time off and he intended to enjoy it fully. The cafe wasn't anything fancy, just a small cozy spot with wooden tables and chairs scattered around, but it had a charm that made him feel at ease. Marcus ordered a cup of strong black coffee and opened a book about leadership, something he often read during his downtime. Marcus was a man who carried himself with quiet confidence. His broad shoulders, muscular frame, and neatly trimmed beard gave him an imposing presence, but his calm demeanor softened the edges. People passing by might have mistaken him for just another guy enjoying a peaceful evening, unaware of the incredible sacrifices and hardships he had endured while serving his country. For Marcus, however, this moment was precious, a chance to step away from the chaos of war and simply be present. As he sipped his coffee, lost in thought, little did he know that his evening was about to take a dramatic turn. Across the street, Officer Greg Patterson was patrolling the area. Patterson was known in the community for his aggressive behavior and questionable tactics. Over the years, several complaints had been filed against him, mostly by people of color who felt targeted by his actions. Despite these allegations, Patterson remained on the force, convinced that he was doing what was best for the town. Unfortunately, his methods often crossed the line between authority and abuse. Patterson's eyes scanned the cafe, searching for anything or anyone that seemed out of place. That's when he noticed Marcus. To Patterson, Marcus didn't fit the mold of someone who belonged there, sitting alone, reading a book and sipping coffee. Something about it rubbed Patterson the wrong way. Maybe it was Marcus's confident posture or the fact that he looked different from most of the other patrons. Whatever the reason, Patterson decided to investigate further. Without hesitation, Patterson marched over to Marcus's table. His heavy boots thudded against the pavement, announcing his arrival before he even spoke. "Hey, you!" Patterson barked, pointing directly at Marcus. "What are you doing here?" Marcus looked up from his book, surprised by the sudden intrusion. He set the book down gently and met Patterson's gaze with steady eyes. "I'm having coffee," Marcus replied calmly. His voice was firm, yet respectful, the kind of tone you'd use when addressing someone in authority. "Is there a problem, officer?" Instead of answering, Patterson leaned in closer, his face contorted into a scowl. "Do you live around here?" he demanded. "Show me some ID." At this point, Marcus realized that this wasn't going to be a friendly conversation. Still, he remained composed, refusing to let anger get the better worth of him. "Sir, I'm not required to show you my ID unless you have reasonable suspicion that I've done something wrong," Marcus explained patiently. "I'm just sitting here, minding my own business." Patterson bristled at the response. No one talked back to him like that, not in his town. "You think you're smart, huh?" he snapped, his voice rising. "Just because you're wearing civilian clothes doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. Now show me your ID." The tension between them was palpable. Nearby customers began to glance nervously in their direction, unsure of what was happening. Some pretended not to notice, burying their faces in menus or scrolling through their phones. Others exchanged worried looks, wondering if they should step in or stay out of it. A few brave souls pulled out their cell phones, discreet song capturing the scene in case things escalated further. Despite the growing audience, Marcus stayed focused. He knew how quickly situations like this could spiral out of control, especially for someone like him, a black man facing off against a white police officer with a reputation for hostility. But Marcus also knew his rights. He had fought for freedom and justice in faraway lands, and he wasn't about to let anyone trample on those principles here at home. "I understand you're just doing your job," Marcus said, keeping his tone even. "But harassing innocent people isn't part of that job. If you don't have a valid reason to detain me, then I'd appreciate it if you'd leave me alone." Patterson's face turned red with fury. How dare this man question his authority? In his mind, Marcus's refusal to comply was proof enough that he was guilty of something. even if Patterson couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. "Don't try to play games with me," Patterson growled, stepping closer until he was practically looming over Marcus. "You're coming with me whether you like it or not." With that, Patterson reached out and grabbed Marcus by the arm, yanking him roughly toward him. Coffee spilled onto the table, soaking Marcus's book and scattering papers everywhere. The commotion drew even more attention, and whispers rippled through the crowd. Was this really happening? Could a decorated Navy SEAL be treated this way, in broad daylight? For a brief moment, Marcus considered letting Patterson drag him away. After all, resisting arrest, even unjustified arrest, could make matters worse. But then he remembered something important. He wasn't just fighting for himself. This wasn't just about one bad cop. It was about standing up against the systemic racism that had plagued communities like his for generations. If he backed down now, what message would that send? Taking a deep breath, Marcus locked eyes with Patterson. There was no fear in his expression, only determination. "Officer," he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "If you don't let go of me right now, you're going to regret it." Patterson laughed bitterly, mistaking Marcus's warning for empty bravado. "Oh yeah? And what are you going to do about it, tough guy?" The cafe buzzed with tension as Marcus and Officer Patterson stood locked in a standoff. Patterson's grip on Marcus's arm tightened, his knuckles white with anger. He leaned in closer, sneering as if trying to intimidate Marcus into submission. "You think you're special, don't you?" Patterson spat, his voice dripping with disdain. "Walking around here like you own the place. But I see right through you. You're just another punk." Marcus didn't flinch. Years of training had taught him how to stay calm under pressure, even when faced with hostility. His heart was steady, his breathing controlled. He'd been in life-or-death situations before. This wasn't one of them, but it still mattered deeply. For Marcus, this wasn't just about himself. It was about standing up for everyone who had ever been treated unfairly because of the color of their skin. "Officer," Marcus said slowly, his tone measured and firm, "you're making a big mistake. I haven't done anything wrong. Let go of me, and we can end this peacefully." But Patterson wasn't listening. Instead, he twisted Marcus's arm slightly, causing a sharp pain to shoot through his shoulder. The action drew gasps from the onlookers nearby. Some people began whispering nervously, while others continued recording the scene on their phones. A young mother holding her child's hand looked away, shaking her head in disbelief. How could this be happening? Patterson smirked, clearly enjoying the attention. "Peacefully? Oh, I'll show you peaceful," he mocked. "Let's see how tough you are when you're face down on the ground." That was the moment everything changed. Up until now, Marcus had been patient, hoping that reasoning with Patterson might work. But there was only so much provocation a person could take, especially someone like Marcus who had sacrificed so much for his country. As Patterson tried to shove him against the cafe table, scattering books and spilling coffee everywhere, Marcus decided enough was enough. With precision honed from years of military training, Marcus shifted his weight ever so slightly. His movements were subtle, almost imperceptible, but they were calculated. When Patterson pushed harder, expecting Marcus to stumble, he found himself meeting unexpected resistance. Marcus planted his feet firmly on the ground and used Patterson's own momentum against him. In one swift motion, he redirected the officer's force, causing Patterson to lose balance and stagger backward. The crowd gasped audibly. No one expected the tables to turn so quickly. Patterson, caught off guard, stumbled but managed to regain his footing. Furious, he lunged at Marcus again, this time attempting to grab him by the collar. But Marcus was ready. He sidestepped effortlessly, avoiding the clumsy attack, and positioned himself behind Patterson. Before the officer could react, Marcus placed a firm hand on his shoulder and applied gentle yet unyielding pressure, forcing Patterson to freeze in place. "You really don't want to do this," Marcus warned, his voice low and commanding. It was the same tone he used to lead his team during high-stakes missions overseas, the kind of voice that demanded respect and obedience. "I don't want to hurt you, but if you keep pushing, I won't have a choice." Patterson struggled, thrashing his arms and twisting his body in an attempt to break free. But Marcus's hold was unshakable. Every move Patterson made only reinforced the fact that he was no match for the highly trained Navy SEAL. Finally, realizing he couldn't escape, Patterson stopped struggling and glared at Marcus, his face flushed with embarrassment and rage. For a brief moment, silence fell over the cafe. All eyes were on the two men, one humiliated and defeated, the other poised and dignified. Marcus loosened his grip slightly but didn't let go entirely. Leaning in closer, he spoke directly into Patterson's ear, ensuring that only the officer could hear him. "Listen carefully," Marcus whispered, his words sharp and deliberate. "If you ever disrespect someone because of their skin color again, there won't be a second chance. Do we understand each other?" Patterson hesitated, his pride warring with his fear. Eventually, he nodded reluctantly, unable to meet Marcus's gaze. Satisfied, Marcus released him and stepped back, putting a safe distance between them. He straightened his shirt, brushed off imaginary dust, and turned to face the stunned crowd. "I'm sorry for the disturbance," Marcus said calmly, addressing the onlookers. "This isn't how I wanted to spend my evening. But sometimes, you have to stand up for what's right." The cafe erupted into applause. People clapped and cheered, some even standing up to show their support. A teenage boy gave Marcus a thumbs up, while an elderly man tipped his hat in admiration. One woman approached Marcus cautiously, her hands trembling as she held out her phone. "Thank you," she said softly. "Can I shake your hand? My son needs to know that heroes like you exist." Marcus smiled warmly and accepted the handshake, touched by the gesture. He didn't consider himself a hero. He was just a man doing what he believed was right, but he understood the impact moments like this could have. By standing his ground, he had not only defended himself but also inspired others to speak out against injustice. Meanwhile, Patterson stood frozen, his ego bruised and his authority undermined. For the first time in his career, he felt powerless. The cocky smirk he had worn earlier was gone, replaced by a look of shame and confusion. He glanced around at the crowd, searching for allies, but found none. Everyone was either glaring at him or ignoring him completely. Defeated, he muttered something under his breath and stormed off, leaving behind a trail of awkward silence. As the adrenaline began to fade, Marcus took a deep breath and sat back down at his table. His coffee was cold now, and his book was soaked with spilled liquid, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that he had stood up for himself, and for anyone else who might have been targeted unfairly. The evening may not have gone as planned, but it had become something far more meaningful. And so as the sun dipped below the horizon and the cafe lights flickered on, Marcus reflected on the events of the past few minutes. He knew this wouldn't be the end of the story. Not for him, not for Patterson, and certainly not for the community. But for now, he allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes, teaching a lesson required patience, courage, and a little bit of strength. And tonight, Marcus had shown all three in abundance. The aftermath of the confrontation rippled through the cafe like a shockwave. People who had been mere bystanders moments ago now found themselves caught in the emotional whirlwind of what they had witnessed. Some clapped enthusiastically, their hands echoing loudly in the quiet evening air, while others simply stared, processing the scene with wide eyes. A few whispered among themselves, their voices tinged with awe and disbelief. One thing was clear. Marcus Johnson had just delivered a masterclass in restraint, dignity, and strength. As Marcus sat back down at his table, he took a moment to collect himself. His heart was still racing, not from fear, but from the intensity of the situation. He glanced at the scattered remains of his coffee cup and the damp pages of his book, which were now warped and stained. The sight brought a faint smile to his lips. "Well," he muttered under his breath, "that's one way to ruin a good read." Despite the chaos, Marcus felt a strange sense of peace. He hadn't wanted trouble, but when it came knocking, he had faced it head on. More importantly, he had done so without losing his cool or resorting to violence. In his line of work as a Navy SEAL, he knew that true power wasn't about domination. It was about control. Control over your emotions, your actions, and your response to adversity. Tonight, he had demonstrated exactly that. The crowd around him continued to buzz with energy. Several people approached Marcus, eager to express their admiration. A young couple holding hands tightly stopped by his table. "Thank you," the woman said earnestly, her voice trembling slightly. "We've seen stuff like this happen before, but no one ever stands up like you did. You're an inspiration." Marcus nodded graciously, though he didn't feel like a hero. "I'm just a regular person trying to do the right thing," he replied. "But I appreciate the kind words." A middle-aged man in a business suit stepped forward next, extending his hand. "You handled that beautifully," he said, shaking Marcus's hand firmly. "I hope Officer, whatever his name is, learned something from this. We need more people like you in the world." Marcus chuckled, softly. "Let's hope so," he said, though he doubted Patterson would change overnight. Still, he appreciated the sentiment. Each interaction reminded him that moments like these mattered. They planted seeds of hope and encouraged others to speak out against injustice. Meanwhile, Officer Patterson had retreated to his patrol car, fuming with a mix of anger and humiliation. He slammed the door shut behind him and gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white. How could this have happened? He was supposed to be the authority figure, the one in charge. Yet here he was, bested by a civilian in front of an entire crowd. His mind raced with excuses and justifications. Maybe Marcus had been suspicious. Maybe he should have arrested him after all. But deep down, Patterson knew the truth. He had gone too far, and everyone had seen it. Back at the cafe, the atmosphere remained electric. Someone uploaded a video of the incident to social media, and within minutes it began spreading like wildfire. Comments poured in from all corners of the internet, praising Marcus for his composure and condemning Patterson's behavior. Hashtags like "Stand with Marcus" and "A Justice for All" started trending, drawing attention not only to the specific encounter, but also to broader issues of racial profiling and police misconduct. Local news outlets quickly picked up the story. Reporters arrived at the cafe, microphones and cameras in hand, eager to interview witnesses and piece together what had happened. They spoke to the elderly man who had tipped his hat to Marcus, the young mother who had recorded the incident, and even the barista who had served Marcus his coffee earlier that evening. Each account painted a vivid picture of a courageous individual standing up to unwarranted aggression. One reporter managed to catch Marcus before he left the cafe. "Can we get a statement from you?" she asked, holding out her microphone. "People are calling you a real-life hero." Marcus hesitated for a moment. He wasn't comfortable with the label, but he also recognized the importance of using his platform to send a message. "I don't consider myself a hero," he began, speaking directly into the camera. "I'm just someone who believes in treating others with respect and fairness. What happened tonight shouldn't happen to anyone. Not in this town, not anywhere. Racism and abuse of power have no place in our society, and it's up to all of us to stand against it." His words resonated deeply with viewers. Social media exploded with support, with thousands of people sharing the clip and expressing gratitude for Marcus's bravery. Messages flooded in from across the country, thanking him for being a role model and urging others to follow his example. Even celebrities chimed in, retweeting the video and amplifying the conversation. By the time Marcus finally left the cafe, the streets outside were filled with reporters and curious onlookers. Flashbulbs popped as he walked to his car, but he kept his head held high, refusing to let the attention overwhelm him. This wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about making a difference. As he drove home, he reflected on the events of the night and the impact they might have on the community. The following morning, the story dominated headlines. Local newspapers ran front-page articles detailing the confrontation, complete with quotes from witnesses and screenshots of the viral video. Talk shows invited experts to discuss the incident, debating topics like systemic racism, police reform, and the importance of accountability. Community leaders organized rallies and town hall meetings, calling for transparency and change within law enforcement. Amidst the public outcry, the police department came under intense scrutiny. Calls for Patterson's suspension grew louder, with many demanding an investigation into his conduct. Internal Affairs launched a formal inquiry, reviewing past complaints filed against him and examining body cam footage from previous incidents. For the first time in years, it seemed that Patterson's actions would face consequences. Patterson, meanwhile, struggled to cope with the fallout. He avoided answering calls from colleagues and skipped his usual morning coffee run, knowing that whispers would follow him wherever he went. At home, he replayed the events of the night in his mind, cringing at every misstep. Had he really been that aggressive, that disrespectful? The questions haunted him, gnawing at his conscience. Eventually, unable to ignore the weight of the situation, Patterson sought guidance from a counselor. It wasn't easy admitting that he needed help, but he realized that ignoring the problem wouldn't make it go away. During their sessions, he began confronting uncomfortable truths about his biases and prejudices. Slowly, painfully, he started to understand why his behavior had been so harmful, and how much work lay ahead if he wanted to rebuild trust. For Marcus, life returned to some semblance of normalcy, though the incident lingered in his thoughts. He received countless messages of support, many from strangers who thanked him for inspiring them to take a stand. Schools and community organizations invited him to speak, hoping to share his story with younger generations. Though he initially hesitated, Marcus eventually agreed, recognizing the value of education and dialogue in creating lasting change. Each speech he gave reinforced his belief in the power of resilience and empathy. He shared anecdotes from his time as a Navy SEAL, emphasizing the importance of teamwork and mutual respect. He talked about the challenges he had faced growing up as a black man in America and how those experiences had shaped his worldview. And he urged his audiences to challenge stereotypes, advocate for equality, and hold institutions accountable. Through it all, Marcus remained humble, deflecting praise and focusing instead on the bigger picture. "This isn't about me," he often said. "It's about all of us working together to build a better future. If my actions can inspire even one person to stand up for what's right, then it's worth it." And so, the ripple effect of that autumn evening continued to spread. Conversations sparked by Marcus's courage led to meaningful discussions, policy changes, and renewed efforts toward justice. While the road ahead was long, one thing was certain. Marcus Johnson had reminded the world that true strength lies not in domination, but in teaching others the value of respect, equality, and humanity. The days following the incident at the cafe felt like a whirlwind for Marcus Johnson. The viral video of his encounter with Officer Patterson had ignited a firestorm of reactions, both online and offline. Social media platforms were flooded, with posts celebrating Marcus's composure and courage, while hashtags like "Respect and Justice" and "Stand with Marcus" trended nationwide. People from all walks of life shared their thoughts, expressing admiration for how Marcus handled himself. With grace under pressure, some even called him a modern-day hero, though Marcus himself shied away from such labels. Local news outlets couldn't get enough of the story. Reporters camped outside Marcus's modest home, hoping to catch a glimpse of him or snag an exclusive interview. Television anchors discussed the incident during morning shows, inviting experts to weigh in on issues of racial profiling, police accountability, and community trust. One popular talk show host described Marcus as the embodiment of strength and dignity, urging viewers to support calls for reform within law enforcement. Community leaders saw an opportunity to drive meaningful change. They organized rallies and town hall meetings, drawing large crowds eager to discuss ways to address systemic racism and improve relations between residents and police. At one such gathering, a young activist named Jasmine took the stage, her voice trembling with emotion. Marcus didn't just stand up for himself that night, he stood up for all of us, she declared. We owe it to him and to ourselves to keep this momentum going. While the public rallied behind Marcus, the spotlight also intensified scrutiny on Officer Patterson and the police department. Internal Affairs investigators worked tirelessly to review past complaints against Patterson, uncovering a troubling pattern of discriminatory behavior. Several individuals came forward with stories of being unfairly targeted or mistreated by him, adding fuel to the growing demand for accountability. Community members, emboldened by the attention the case had received, urged officials to take swift action. The police chief, sensing the mounting pressure, called an emergency press conference to address the situation. Flanked by senior officers, he announced that Patterson had been placed on administrative leave, pending the outcome of the investigation. "We are committed to ensuring transparency and fairness in our department," the chief stated, though his words did little to quell skepticism among critics. Many argued that suspending Patterson was only the first step. Real change would require deeper reforms, including mandatory training on cultural sensitivity and de-escalation tactics. For Patterson, the consequences of his actions weighed heavily. Once confident in his authority, he now found himself isolated and ostracized. Fellow officers, wary of guilt by association, distanced themselves from him. Even his family struggled to reconcile the man they knew with the image portrayed in the media. His teenage son, who idolized his father growing up, stopped speaking to him altogether after seeing the viral video. Desperate to salvage what remained of his career, and perhaps his humanity, Patterson reluctantly attended counseling sessions, recommended by the department. Initially defensive, he resisted introspection, insisting that he was simply doing his job. But over time, guided by a patient therapist, he began confronting uncomfortable truths about his biases. He learned about implicit prejudice and how deeply ingrained stereotypes could influence behavior without conscious awareness. It was a painful process, forcing him to acknowledge mistakes he had long ignored. During one particularly raw session, Patterson broke down in tears. "I never meant to hurt anyone," he confessed, his voice choked with emotion. "But I see, now that I've caused so much pain. How do I make this right?" His therapist encouraged him to start small, by listening, learning, and taking responsibility for his actions. "Change begins with accountability," she told him. "You can't undo the past, but you can choose to grow from it." Meanwhile, Marcus continued navigating the unexpected fame thrust upon him. Though grateful for the support, he grew weary of constant attention. Strangers approached him everywhere he went, asking for selfies or autographs. Some sent heartfelt letters thanking him for inspiring them to speak out against injustice, while others sought advice on handling similar situations. While flattered, Marcus worried that the focus on him might overshadow the larger conversation about systemic issues. To channel the momentum into something productive, Marcus accepted invitations to speak at schools, churches, and community centers. His talks combined personal anecdotes with lessons learned during his time as a Navy SEAL, emphasizing themes of resilience, empathy, and leadership. At one event, he addressed a packed auditorium of high school students, many of whom were minorities. "You have power within you," he told them, his voice steady and reassuring. "Don't let anyone make you feel small or insignificant. Stand tall, stay true to your values, and remember that your voice matters." His message resonated deeply, sparking lively discussions among attendees. Teachers reported that students returned to class buzzing with ideas for initiatives to promote equality and inclusion. Inspired by Marcus's example, some formed clubs dedicated to fostering dialogue and understanding across racial lines. Others launched campaigns to raise awareness about police misconduct and advocate for policy changes. As weeks turned into months, the ripple effects of Marcus's actions became increasingly evident. Local businesses displayed signs supporting anti-racism efforts, and community organizations partnered with law enforcement to host workshops on building trust. The police department implemented new training programs focused on bias recognition and conflict resolution, partly inspired by the public outcry surrounding Patterson's conduct. Even Patterson, despite his tarnished reputation, showed signs of progress. After completing his counseling sessions, he volunteered to participate in diversity seminars, sharing his experiences as a cautionary tale. Though hesitant at first, he gradually opened up, admitting his flaws and apologizing publicly for his behavior. While forgiveness didn't come easily, some community members appreciated his willingness to confront his shortcomings. For Marcus, the journey reinforced his belief in the importance of standing firm against injustice. He knew that real change wouldn't happen overnight. It would require sustained effort and collaboration. But every step forward, no matter how small, brought hope for a brighter future. As he reflected on the events that had unfolded, he felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the support he'd received, but for the opportunity to inspire others to join the fight for equality and justice. And so, the story of Marcus Johnson served as a powerful reminder. When faced with adversity, responding with dignity and strength can ignite a movement far greater than oneself. Through courage and conviction, ordinary people can spark extraordinary change, proving that respect and humanity are values worth fighting for. As the weeks stretched into months, the story of Marcus Johnson and Officer Patterson continued to unfold, weaving its way through the fabric of the community in unexpected ways. The incident at the cafe had become more than just a viral moment. It had sparked a broader conversation about accountability, reform, and the kind of society people wanted to build. For both Marcus and Patterson, life had changed dramatically, but not always in the ways they might have anticipated. For Marcus, the newfound attention brought opportunities to make a real difference. Schools, churches, and civic organizations clamored to hear him speak, eager to learn from his experiences and insights. His talks weren't just about the night at the cafe, they were about resilience, leadership, and the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. He often began his speeches by sharing stories from his time as a Navy SEAL, emphasizing the values of teamwork, discipline, and mutual respect that guided him during missions overseas. "I've been in situations where lives depended on making the right choice," Marcus would say, his voice calm but commanding. "And I've learned that true strength isn't about overpowering others, it's about lifting them up. It's about treating everyone with dignity, no matter who they are or where they come from." His words resonated deeply, especially among young audiences. At one high school assembly, a teenage girl stood up during the Q&A session, visibly nervous but determined to share her thoughts. "I'm scared to stand up for myself sometimes," she admitted, her voice trembling. "What if I mess up? What if things get worse?" Marcus smiled warmly, leaning forward slightly to connect with her. "Fear is natural," he replied. "But remember this. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. You don't have to be perfect. Just take that first step, however small it may seem, and know that you're not alone. There are people who will stand with you." Moments like these reminded Marcus why he had chosen to embrace his role as an advocate for change. While the constant spotlight could be exhausting, the impact he was having made it worthwhile. Teachers reported seeing shifts in their students' attitudes, more open conversations about race, increased willingness to challenge stereotypes, and a growing sense of empowerment among marginalized groups. Even parents reached out to thank Marcus for inspiring their children to believe in themselves and their ability to create positive change. Meanwhile, the police department faced mounting pressure to address systemic issues within its ranks. Community leaders organized town hall meetings, inviting residents to voice their concerns directly to law enforcement officials. These gatherings were raw and emotional, with some attendees recounting painful encounters with officers who had treated them unfairly. Others shared stories of loved ones lost to police brutality, their voices breaking under the weight of grief and anger. At one particularly charged meeting, a woman named Carla stepped up to the microphone, clutching a photo of her late brother. "He wasn't perfect, but he didn't deserve to die the way he did," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here today because I want my son to grow up in a world where he doesn't have to fear the people who are supposed to protect him. That starts with holding bad cops accountable." Her plea struck a chord with many in the audience, including some officers who attended the meeting. One younger officer approached Carla afterward, offering condolences and promising to work toward meaningful reforms. "We can't bring your brother back," he said quietly, "but we can honor his memory by doing better." by being better. These interactions, though difficult, planted seeds of hope. Slowly but surely, bridges began to form between the community and law enforcement. The department introduced new training programs focused on cultural sensitivity, conflict resolution, and recognizing implicit bias. Officers participated in workshops led by civil rights advocates, learning how to de-escalate tense situations without resorting to aggression. Some even volunteered for ride-alongs with community members, gaining first-hand insight into the challenges faced by residents. Officer Patterson, meanwhile, remained suspended pending the outcome of the internal investigation. Though he avoided public appearances, rumors swirled about his future. Would he lose his badge? Could he ever regain the trust of the community? The uncertainty weighed heavily on him, compounding the guilt and shame he already felt. Counseling sessions became a lifeline for Patterson, providing a safe space to confront his flaws and fears. Over time, he began to see himself not as a villain but as someone capable of growth. His therapist encouraged him to reflect on his upbringing and the societal influences that shaped his worldview. Together, they explored how years of unchecked biases had led him down a destructive path, and how he could begin to undo the damage. One breakthrough came during a group therapy session with other officers facing similar struggles. As Patterson listened to their stories, he realized he wasn't alone in grappling with prejudice and accountability. One veteran cop confessed to feeling trapped by outdated policing methods that prioritized force over understanding. Another admitted to turning a blind eye to misconduct within the department, fearing retaliation if he spoke out. "I thought I was protecting my team," the older officer said, his voice thick with regret. "But all I was doing was enabling bad behavior. Now I see that silence is just as harmful as action." Patterson nodded, feeling a flicker of solidarity. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to imagine a different future, one where he could contribute to healing rather than harm. With his therapist's guidance, he started attending diversity seminars, listening intently as speakers shared their experiences of discrimination and resilience. Though uncomfortable at times, these sessions opened his eyes to perspectives he had never considered before. Eventually, Patterson decided to take a bold step, apologizing publicly. He wrote a letter addressed to the community, acknowledging his mistakes and pledging to do better. "I failed you," he wrote. "I let my biases cloud my judgment, and I hurt innocent people in the process. I am truly sorry. Moving forward, I promise to listen, learn, and work alongside you to build a safer, fairer town for everyone." The response was mixed. Some dismissed his apology as insincere, accusing him of seeking redemption only after being exposed. Others, however, appreciated the gesture, viewing it as a starting point for reconciliation. A local pastor invited Patterson to join a community service project, hoping to give him a chance to rebuild trust through action. Tentatively, Patterson accepted, knowing it wouldn't erase his past but believing it might help pave the way for a brighter future. Back in the heart of the community, the cafe where the confrontation had taken place became a symbol of resilience and unity. Customers left notes of encouragement taped to the walls thanking Marcus for standing up against injustice. The owner painted a mural outside depicting hands of various skin tones reaching toward each other, accompanied by the words, "Together we rise." It quickly became a popular spot for photos, drawing visitors from neighboring towns. For Marcus, the mural served as a reminder of the power of collective action. He visited the cafe often, enjoying quiet moments of reflection amidst the buzz of activity. Sometimes strangers would approach him wanting to shake his hand or share their own stories of overcoming adversity. Each interaction reinforced his belief that change was possible, not through grand gestures but through countless small acts of courage and compassion. As the seasons changed, so too did the community. Conversations once marked by tension and mistrust gave way to collaboration and understanding. Police officers partnered with residents to organize neighborhood cleanups, mentorship programs, and safety initiatives. Schools implemented curricula focused on diversity and inclusion, empowering students to challenge injustice wherever they encountered it. Even businesses got involved, hosting fundraisers and awareness campaigns to support marginalized groups. Through it all, Marcus remained steadfast in his mission. Though he returned to active duty after his leave ended, he stayed connected to the community, checking in regularly via video calls and social media. His parting message to those who looked up to him was simple, yet profound. Never stop fighting for what's right. Together we can create a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued. And so, the story of Marcus Johnson and Officer Patterson evolved into something greater, a testament to the enduring power of accountability, empathy, and hope. While scars from the past lingered, they also served as reminders of how far the Yao community had come, and how much further it could go. Through courage and determination, ordinary people had sparked extraordinary change, proving that even in the face of adversity, unity and progress were always within reach. Months had passed since the night at the cafe, and while life had moved forward for everyone involved, the lessons of that evening continued to shape their paths in profound ways. For Marcus Johnson, the journey had been transformative, not just for himself, but for the countless lives he had touched along the way. The ripple effect of his actions extended far beyond what anyone could have imagined, proving that even one moment of courage could ignite lasting change. Marcus returned to active duty as a Navy SEAL, carrying with him a renewed sense of purpose. His experiences back home had deepened his understanding of the challenges faced by marginalized communities, both domestically and globally. During missions overseas, he often found himself reflecting on the importance of empathy and leadership, qualities he now prioritized more than ever. Whether leading his team through high-stakes operations or mentoring younger recruits, Marcus emphasized the value of respect and unity. "We're stronger when we work together," he would tell them, "and every person deserves to be treated with dignity." Back in his hometown, the impact of Marcus's stand against injustice remained visible. The cafe where the confrontation occurred became a hub for community gatherings, hosting events ranging from poetry readings to workshops on racial equity. Local artists painted murals inspired by Marcus's story, depicting scenes of resilience and solidarity. One mural showed a lone figure standing tall against a storm, symbolizing the strength it takes to challenge oppressive systems. Beneath it were the words, "Courage is contagious." The police department also underwent significant changes, driven partly by public pressure and partly by internal reflection. New leadership took charge, committed to fostering transparency and accountability within the force. Officers participated in mandatory training programs designed to address implicit bias and improve interactions with residents. Body cameras became standard equipment, ensuring that incidents could be reviewed objectively. Community advisory boards were established, giving citizens a voice in shaping law enforcement policies. For Officer Greg Patterson, the road to redemption was long and difficult, but not impossible. After completing his counseling sessions and attending diversity seminars, he requested a transfer to a smaller precinct, hoping to start fresh in an environment where he could rebuild trust. Though many doubted whether he deserved a second chance, Patterson worked tirelessly to prove his intentions were genuine. He volunteered for outreach programs, helping organize food drives and youth mentorship initiatives. Slowly, cautiously, some members of the community began to see glimpses of the man he was trying to become. One pivotal moment came during a neighborhood cleanup event. Patterson arrived early, wearing plain clothes to avoid drawing attention. As he picked up trash, alongside volunteers, a young boy approached him hesitantly. "Are you a cop?" the child asked, clutching a plastic bag filled with litter. Patterson knelt down to meet the boy's gaze. "Yes, I am," he replied softly. "But today, I'm just here to help. What's your name?" The boy introduced himself as Jamal and shyly admitted that his mom didn't like cops because of bad experiences in the past. Instead of becoming defensive, Patterson nodded thoughtfully. "I understand why she feels that way," he said. "Some officers haven't done right by people, but I want you to know that there are good cops too, people who care about keeping everyone safe. And if you ever need someone to talk to, I'll listen. Jamal smiled faintly before running off to join his friends. It was a small interaction, but for Patterson it felt monumental, a sign that healing was possible, however gradual. As the months turned into a year, Marcus remained a guiding light for the community. Though stationed abroad for much of the time, he stayed connected through video calls and social media, offering encouragement and advice whenever needed. On weekends, he visited schools and community centers, sharing stories of perseverance and hope. His message was always the same: change starts with us. We can't wait for others to fix things. We have to take responsibility ourselves. One particularly memorable visit took place at a middle school where students had organized a day of unity. They invited Marcus to speak at an assembly where they showcased projects celebrating diversity and inclusion. One group performed a skit about overcoming prejudice while another displayed artwork depicting their vision of a fairer world. When it was Marcus's turn to address the crowd, he looked out at the sea of eager faces and felt a surge of pride. "You guys are the future," he told them, his voice filled with conviction. "Don't let anyone tell you that you're too young to make a difference. Every act of kindness, every word of encouragement, every stand against injustice, it all adds up. Together we can create a world where no one has to feel afraid or invisible." The students erupted into applause, inspired by his words. Afterward, several lined up to thank him personally, sharing their dreams of becoming teachers, doctors, scientists, and activists. One girl handed him a handmade card that read, "Thank you for showing us what bravery looks like." For Marcus, moments like these reaffirmed his belief in the power of collective action. He knew that true progress required patience and persistence, but he also saw evidence of it everywhere he looked. Businesses implemented hiring practices aimed at reducing bias. Schools introduced curricula focused on history and social justice. Even local government officials collaborated with grassroots organizations to address systemic inequities. Meanwhile, Patterson's efforts to rebuild his reputation gained traction. While some remained skeptical of his motives, others acknowledged the sincerity of his transformation. A local newspaper published a profile on him, highlighting his journey from controversy to redemption. In the article, Patterson admitted that he still struggled with guilt over his past actions but vowed to keep learning and growing. "I can't undo the harm I caused," he said, "but I can dedicate my life to making amends. That's what I'm trying to do." The piece sparked mixed reactions, with readers debating whether forgiveness was warranted. Some argued that Patterson's efforts demonstrated the possibility of personal growth, while others maintained that trust must be earned over time. Regardless of differing opinions, the article reignited conversations about accountability and second chances, topics that continued to resonate deeply within the community. As the anniversary of the cafe incident approached, residents planned a special commemoration to honor the strides made in the past year. Dubbed Unity Day, the event featured speeches, performances, and activities celebrating diversity and resilience. Marcus flew in specially to attend, greeted by cheers and applause as he walked onto the stage. Standing beside him were representatives from various groups, law enforcement, educators, activists, and everyday citizens, all united in their commitment to creating a better future. In his closing remarks, Marcus reflected on the journey they had shared. "A year ago, none of us could have predicted how this story would unfold," he said, his voice steady yet emotional. "But here we are, standing together, determined to build a world rooted in respect and equality. Let's keep moving forward, supporting each other every step of the way." The crowd erupted into cheers, waving banners and chanting slogans like "Together we rise" and "Justice for all." As fireworks lit up the night sky, casting colorful reflections on smiling faces, it was clear that the spirit of unity had taken hold. And so, the legacy of Marcus Johnson lived on, not as a tale of revenge or triumph over adversity, but as a testament to the enduring power of compassion, courage, and collaboration. Through his actions, he had reminded everyone that true strength lies not in domination, but in teaching others the value of respect and humanity. For Officer Patterson, the lesson served as a catalyst for change, inspiring him to confront his biases and strive for redemption. and for the community it sparked a movement toward justice, equality, and hope. A reminder that even in the face of darkness, light can prevail when people come together with a shared vision. As the final firework faded into the night, Marcus stood quietly, taking in the scene around him. The road ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, but for now, he allowed himself a moment of gratitude. Change wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't quick, but it was possible. And sometimes, all it took was one brave soul to show the way.